Welcome, dear friends. Today I'm going to tell you a heartwarming tale of love, loss, and unexpected paths. Enjoy the story. Lila sat on a bench in Central Park, her eyes fixed on the two small figures racing across the playground. Rachel and Ryan, her beloved niece and nephew, were lost in their own world of make-believe, their laughter ringing out like tiny bells in the crisp autumn air. As she watched them play, Lila couldn't help but feel a twinge of sadness. It had been 2 years since her sister Lauren had passed away, leaving her as the sole guardian of the twins. It hadn't been easy, balancing her job as a receptionist with the demands of raising 2 young children. But Lila had thrown herself into the role with all the love and dedication she could muster. Just then, an elderly man approached the playground, his eyes twinkling with warmth as he watched the children play. Lila tensed, her protective instincts kicking into high gear. But as she watched, the man simply stood there, a wistful smile on his face. After a few moments, he turned and caught Lila's eye, giving her a friendly nod. "Your children are lovely," he said, his voice gentle. "They remind me of my own grandchildren." Lila felt herself relax, charmed by the man's kind demeanor. "Thank you," she said, smiling. "But they're actually my niece and nephew. I'm their guardian." The man's eyes softened with understanding. "Ah, I see. That must be a big responsibility, taking on 2 young children on your own?" Lila nodded, feeling a lump rise in her throat. "It is, but they're worth it. They're all I have left of my sister." The man sat down beside her, his eyes filled with sympathy. "I'm sorry for your loss. I know how hard it is, losing someone you love. My wife passed away a few years ago, and I've been on my own ever since." Lila felt a rush of empathy for the man. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "That must be very difficult." The man smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "It is, but I've found that life has a way of surprising you, even in the darkest of times. I'm Victor, by the way. Victor Andrews." Lila shook his outstretched hand, feeling a spark of connection pass between them. "I'm Lila. It's nice to meet you, Victor." A few days later, Lila found herself standing outside Victor's sprawling mansion, the twins by her side. Victor had invited them over for a playdate, insisting that they come and enjoy his spacious yard and garden. Lila had hesitated at first, unsure about accepting such a generous offer from a relative stranger. But there was something about Victor, a warmth and kindness that made her feel safe and at ease. As they stepped inside the house, Lila couldn't help but gasp at the opulent furnishings and priceless works of art that adorned the walls. It was like stepping into a fairy tale, a world of beauty and luxury that she had never dreamed of. Victor greeted them with a warm smile, his eyes lighting up at the sight of Rachel and Ryan. "Welcome," he said, ushering them into the living room. "I'm so glad you could come. I've been looking forward to this all week." As the children ran off to explore the house, Victor turned to Lila, his expression growing serious. "Lila, there's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice low. "Something that I haven't shared with many people." Lila felt a flicker of unease, but she nodded, encouraging him to continue. "I'm dying," Victor said softly, his eyes filling with tears. "The doctors say I only have a few months left, maybe a year if I'm lucky. And the thought of spending my final days alone in this big old house, it terrifies me." Lila's heart clenched with sympathy. She couldn't imagine the pain and fear that Victor must be feeling, facing the end of his life with no one by his side. "Oh, Victor," she said softly, reaching out to take his hand. "I'm so sorry, I had no idea." Victor smiled sadly, squeezing her hand in return. "Not many people do. I've kept it to myself, not wanting to burden anyone with my problems. But when I met you and the twins, something inside me just clicked. I felt a connection with you, a sense of kinship that I haven't felt in a long time." He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for what he was about to say next. "Lila, I have a proposition for you. I know we've only just met, but I feel like I can trust you. And I want to ask, would you consider moving in with me, becoming my live-in companion and caregiver?" Lila's eyes widened with shock, her mind reeling at the unexpected offer. "Victor, I don't know what to say. This is all so sudden." Victor nodded, his expression understanding. I know it's a lot to take in, but I want you to know that I would take care of you and the twins, provide for you in every way possible. You could quit your job, focus on raising the children in a stable, loving environment. And in return, all I ask is for a little companionship in my final days. Lila felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by the generosity and kindness of this man who had come into their lives like a guardian angel. She knew that accepting his offer would change everything, would mean taking a leap of faith into an uncertain future. But as she looked into Victor's eyes, saw the hope and longing shining there, she knew that she couldn't say no. Not when he needed her so desperately, not when he was offering her and the twins a chance at a better life. Okay, she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. We'll do it. We'll move in with you, Victor. And I promise, I'll be there for you every step of the way. You won't have to face this alone. Victor's face lit up with joy, tears spilling down his cheeks as he pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank you, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Thank you for giving me a reason to keep going, for bringing love and laughter back into my life. And as Lila held him tight, feeling the warmth of his embrace and the love that flowed between them, she knew that she had made the right choice. That this was exactly where she was meant to be, with the man who had become like a father to her, and the children who were her whole world. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity as Lila and the twins settled into their new life at Victor's mansion. It was a big adjustment, going from their tiny apartment to the sprawling grandeur of the estate. But Victor made the transition as smooth as possible, hiring tutors and nannies to help with the children's education and care. Lila found herself falling into a comfortable routine, spending her days caring for Victor and her nights reading bedtime stories to the twins. She marveled at the change in them, at the way they blossomed under Victor's love and attention. Rachel, who had always been shy and reserved, came out of her shell, laughing and chattering like a little bird. And Ryan, who had been prone to angry outbursts and tantrums, became calmer and more focused, thriving under the structure and stability of their new life. But it was Victor who surprised her the most. Despite his failing health, he seemed to come alive in the presence of the twins, his eyes sparkling with joy as he played with them in the garden or read them stories by the fire. Lila watched in amazement as the bond between them grew stronger every day, as Victor became the grandfather figure that Rachel and Ryan had never had. One evening, as Lila and Victor sat together in the garden, watching the twins play in the fading light, Victor turned to her with a serious expression on his face. Lila, he said softly, taking her hand in his, there's something I need to tell you, something that I should have told you a long time ago. Lila felt her heart skip a beat, a sense of unease washing over her. What is it, Victor? Is everything okay? Victor sighed, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. I have a son, Lila. His name is David. We had a falling out years ago, and I haven't seen him since. But now, with my time running out, I want to make things right. I want to see him one last time. Lila's eyes widened with surprise, her mind racing with questions. Why had Victor never mentioned his son before? What had happened between them to cause such a rift? But she pushed her curiosity aside, focusing instead on the pain and longing she saw in Victor's eyes. Of course, Victor, we'll find him. I promise. I'll do everything in my power to bring him home to you. Victor's face crumpled with emotion, tears spilling down his cheeks as he pulled her into a fierce hug. Thank you, Lila. Thank you for everything. The next few weeks were a flurry of activity as Lila threw herself into the search for David. She scoured social media, reached out to old friends and acquaintances, even hired a private investigator to help track him down. But it was like he had vanished off the face of the earth. No matter how hard she looked, she couldn't find a single trace of him. Just as she was about to give up hope, a miracle happened. David showed up on their doorstep, his face haggard and his eyes filled with tears. I saw your post on Facebook, he said, his voice choked with emotion. I've been running from my past for so long, but when I saw that Dad was sick, I knew I had to come home. Lila watched in amazement as Victor and David embraced, years of pain and anger melting away in the face of their love for each other. Over the next few days, as David settled into life at the mansion, Lila began to see a different side of him. He was kind and gentle with the twins, playing with them for hours on end and reading them bedtime stories just like Victor used to. And as she watched him with Victor, saw the love and tenderness that flowed between them, she knew that he was a good man, a man who had made mistakes but was trying his best to make things right. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, sorting through old photos and mementos, David suddenly froze, his eyes fixed on a picture of Lauren that Lila had placed on the mantelpiece. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lila looked up, surprised by the intensity of his reaction. "That's my sister, Lauren," she said softly. "She was the twins' mother." David's face drained of color, his hand shaking as he reached out to take the photo. "Lauren," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "My God, it can't be." Lila felt a sense of unease wash over her, a niggling suspicion taking root in her mind. "David," she said slowly, "did you know Lauren?" David looked up at her, his eyes filled with tears. "She was my girlfriend, Lila, my first love. We were together for years, but I was young and stupid and I let my pride get in the way. I left her when she needed me the most, and I've regretted it every day since." Lila felt like the world was spinning around her, the pieces of the puzzle suddenly falling into place. "You're the twins' father," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. David's face crumpled, a sob tearing from his throat. "I didn't know," he said, his voice raw with grief. "I swear to you, Lila, I had no idea. If I had known, I would have been there for her, for them. I would have done anything to make things right." Lila felt a rush of sympathy for the man before her, the man who had lost so much, and was only now realizing the depth of his own tragedy. "David," she said softly, "Lauren died in a car accident 2 years ago. That's why I'm the twins' guardian now." David's face twisted with anguish, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I should have been there," he said, his voice barely audible. "I should have been by her side, raising our children together. But I was too selfish, too caught up in my own life to see what really mattered." Lila reached out and took his hand, her heart aching for the pain he was going through. "You couldn't have known, David. Lauren never told anyone who the father was, not even me. She wanted to protect you, to give you the chance to live your own life." David shook his head, his eyes haunted by the weight of his own guilt. "But I should have been there," he said again, his voice breaking. "I should have been the father that they deserved, the partner that Lauren needed. And now it's too late." Lila felt tears prick at the corners of her own eyes, her heart breaking for the man before her. "It's not too late, David," she said fiercely. "You're here now, and you're a part of the twins' lives. You have the chance to be the father that Lauren always wanted you to be, to give them the love and support that they need." David looked up at her, a glimmer of hope shining through the darkness of his grief. "You really think so?" he asked, his voice trembling. Lila nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "I know so," she said softly. "Lauren would be so proud of the man you've become, David, and I know that together we can give the twins the family they've always deserved." David squeezed her hand, a sense of determination settling over his features. "You're right," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I may have lost Lauren, but I won't lose my children. I won't let them grow up without a father, not when I have the chance to be there for them now." And as they sat there together, hand in hand, the weight of their shared history and the promise of their future stretching out before them, Lila knew that they had finally found the missing piece of their family, the love and strength that would carry them through whatever challenges lay ahead. The next few months passed in a blur of hospital visits and doctor's appointments, as Victor's health continued to decline. But through it all, Lila and David were by his side, holding his hand and wiping his brow, determined to make his final days as comfortable and peaceful as possible. And as they cared for him together, Lila couldn't help but feel a deep connection to David, a sense of kinship that went beyond their shared love for Victor and the twins. She saw the way he looked at her, the warmth and tenderness in his eyes, and she knew that he felt it too. But she was afraid to let herself love again, afraid to open her heart to the possibility of loss and heartbreak. It wasn't until one evening, as they sat together by Victor's bedside, that Lila finally found the courage to tell him how she felt. "David," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion, "I know this might not be the right time, but I need you to know something. I've fallen in love with you. And I know it's complicated, with everything that's happened and the twins and all, but I can't keep pretending that I don't feel something for you." David's eyes widened with surprise, his lips parting in a soft gasp. "Lila," he said, his voice rough with emotion, I don't know what to say. I never imagined that you could feel the same way." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. "I love you too, Lila. I have for a long time now, and I know it won't be easy, that we'll have to take things slow and figure out how to make this work. But I want to try. I want to build a life with you, and with the twins. If you'll have me." Lila felt tears spill down her cheeks, a smile breaking across her face as she leaned in and kissed him softly. "Of course I'll have you," she whispered. "I want nothing more than to be with you, David, to raise the twins together and to make a life with you by my side." And as they held each other close, their hearts beating as one, Lila knew that this was exactly where she was meant to be, with the man she loved and the family they had built together. 3 months later, as Victor was finally released from the hospital, his health improved. Thanks to the surgery and treatments he had undergone, Lila and David stood hand in hand, watching as he walked out into the sunshine, the twins running to greet him with joyful cries. "Grandpa!" Rachel exclaimed, throwing her arms around his waist. "We missed you so much!" "Yeah, Grandpa," Ryan chimed in, his face splitting into a wide grin. "We're so glad you're okay." Victor laughed, his eyes shining with love as he hugged them close. "I missed you too, my darlings. And I'm so grateful to have you all in my life. You've given me a reason to keep fighting, to keep living every day to the fullest." He looked over at Lila and David, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "And I see that you two have finally found each other," he said, his voice warm with approval. "I always knew there was something special between you, even if you couldn't see it yourselves." Lila felt her cheeks flush, her heart swelling with love and gratitude for the man who had brought them all together. "We have you to thank for that, Victor," she said softly. "You brought us into your life, into your heart, and you gave us a home and a family. We will never be able to repay you for that." Victor shook his head, his eyes filling with tears. "You already have, my dear. You've given me the greatest gift of all, the gift of love and companionship in my final years. And I know that with you and David by their side, Rachel and Ryan will grow up to be strong, kind, and loving individuals." As they walked out of the hospital together, Victor looked up at the sky, a sense of peace and contentment washing over him. "I never thought I would get a second chance at life," he said softly, almost to himself. "But here I am, surrounded by the people I love most in the world, with a future that looks brighter than I ever could have imagined." He turned to Lila and David, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you for giving me this gift, for being my family when I thought I had none. I know that whatever time I have left, I will spend it cherishing every moment with you all." Lila felt tears spill down her cheeks, her heart overflowing with love and joy. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, that there would be challenges and obstacles to face. But with David by her side, and the twins and Victor to love and care for, she knew that she could handle anything that life threw their way. And as they walked out into the sunshine, hand in hand, ready to face the future together, Lila knew that she had finally found the happiness and love that she had always dreamed of. That this was the life she was meant to live, with the family she had always longed for. And as she looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the love of her family in her heart, She knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, united by the unbreakable bonds of love and family.